Hi, this is Jack Stanley, and I wanted to talk about a important anniversary for me, something that's rather special, and in the history of sound recording is pretty incredible if you think about it. And that is tomorrow, November the 10th, 2024, will be the 25th anniversary of the 38th President of the United States making a cylinder recording for me and my project, the Edison Recording Project, which was all part of the Menlo Park Museum at the time. And the whole thing was to capture voices of people who had influenced the 20th century. And we were able to gain the voices of many, many people. But perhaps one of the proudest moments of the whole adventure, which someday I'd like to write it all down because it was really quite incredible, was recording the voice of Gerald R. Ford on wax using an Edison phonograph at his home in Rancho, Mirage, California. Actually, it wasn't called a home, it was called a compound. And I wrote his assistant, her name was Penny Circle, in July the 26th of 1999, and asked and slightly suggested that it would be a fascinating thing to honor the man of the millennium, which Edison had been nominated by Life magazine as having had the greatest influence on the millennium. And I thought it would be a wonderful way to cap the millennium, going into a new, whole new century and starting things all over again in the year 2000. But it turned out that I got a call back pretty quick from Penny Circle, and she said the president would be delighted to do it. Well, that was pretty amazing. I was like, wow, that's great. And I had already recorded a few individuals. I had recorded Tony Randall and Joe Franklin, the radio host in New York City. But it was an amazing turn of events to go from recording a radio performer or a television and movie performer to a president. No president had recorded his voice on cylinder since Theodore Roosevelt. If you think about that, that's pretty incredible. Those were done in 1912. And so at the time, in 1999, that was like 87 years before. And so, having gained permission to record the president, there was a lot of work that had to be done. First off, I had to get the machine running properly. We used a fireside. And I had to practice my recording skills. Since we were traveling to a totally different climate, a totally different area, everything was different. You know, it's not as easy just to make a recording in such a place. But we knew we had to go there and make the recordings and make sure they worked fine. So I practiced a lot. And while that was all going on, I received a number of calls. And one was from the Secret Service. You don't think of this, but they had to check my record to see if I was safe. They had to know about the people that would be coming with me, my crew, and use their names. And the mayor of Edison at the time was George Spadoro. And so they had to check all of them out. And that they did. And then we received the green light in that regard. got everything set up. Our two assistants working with me, the cameraman doing still shots, and we also had a film cameraman doing motion pictures of the event. Now, we had to set everything up, and we were all set to go, and we went on a TWA, which no longer exists, but they took care of us and flew us out to California, and we went to John Wayne Airport. And I was carrying, everybody, all of us carrying, various cases, various horns, the phonograph, camera equipment, and of course the cylinders. A lot of brown wax, and of course we brought one special cylinder, which I'll explain. And so the date was set for November the 10th of 1999 to record at his compound. And so that morning, we were in California. We were right outside of Rancho Mirage, and we took our car, loaded with all the materials, and went to the compound. It's fascinating going through Rancho Mirage, California. Every street is named for a personality. At Frank Sinatra Street, you had, Diana Shore Street, you had Bob Hope Avenue, blah, blah, blah. It was really quite fascinating to see. And so we finally got to the compound. We were inspected by the Secret Service. And then we slowly brought all of our equipment in to the compound. We went to a conference room, which had on the outside of it had a picture of Woody Allen in a dress suit with sneakers, which was kind of interesting. And we met Penny Circle and the other secretaries. And what was rather interesting is we got everything all together, and I had a heat lamp as well for the cylinders and put them under the heat lamp. Got everything set up, and in came the president. Shook hands all around. And he kind of looked around and inspected the recording equipment, which he said, I've never seen anything quite like this. But he said he started talking about his childhood. His father had a paint store, and he started talking about that. And he said, my father saved up and bought us a phonograph. And he said, I remember winding it up and listening to records. It was probably a Victor machine or something like that. But nonetheless, he understood the concept. As other people would do when we recorded Walter Cronkite, he gave the best line altogether. He said, my grandparents had Edison machines and my parents had Victor machines, but it didn't matter where I was, I had to wind them. And that's kind of an interesting thing. But that's where we were on November the 10th, 1999. And we made a couple of recordings of the president. While the president was there, I set up the machine and I played this cylinder. Now, of course, this is a 2-minute record cylinder, but it makes a very nice presentation. It has a picture of Edison and all this, lots of Edison stuff. So it looked good in front of the president. This is the very same one I brought. And in it, I brought a cylinder that I had of Theodore Roosevelt. Now, I want you to think about this. The last president to make a recording on cylinder was Theodore Roosevelt. He was the 26th president. And we were recording the 38th. And then I put this record on, and symbolically, through the phonograph, Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th president, spoke to the 38th. History doesn't get any better than that. That was one of the most incredible moments in this whole program. To actually have one president talk to the other through the wonder of recorded sound invented by Thomas Edison. I played the record and I wrote down all the information here about it, for the future. And after the cylinder finished, Ford said, "It's a very unusual voice." Roosevelt did. He had a rather higher pitched voice. It was not resembling the image that he gave, bully and, charge up the hill and blah, blah, blah. But the voice was a very kind of thin and reedy. But he also said, you could do that speech today. So we talked about so many different things. And we were going to spend about 10, 15 minutes with the president. And we ended up spending about 45, maybe a little longer, because we all started chatting and talking about this, because the one thing that's most unique about such a project is that everybody has had a microphone shoved in their face to do an interview. But how many times have you had a recording horn? And so every time they would do it, it was something new and different, and they had fun. And that was the one comment I heard so many times from the many individuals who made the recordings in this project. They said, this was fun. And it was fun for the president. He said, this is delightful. And I said, you are the first, and you just were talked to by the 26th president. And he said, that's pretty amazing. And he looked at everything and he said, this is quite a unit. And we said, thank you, Mr. President. Now, Ford at this point was 86 years of age. And, he was talking about exercising, and I smiled. And he said, not bad for 86. And I said, not at all, Mr. President. He said, I swim twice a day, and I exercise. And I always keep myself busy. And we talked about so many different things. We went across the aisle of every subject you can think of, from the Kennedy assassination onward. He told me he was sharing an office for a while with John F. Kennedy. And he said at night they used to go walking around the Capitol and talking about what they wanted to do in the future. Little did they know they would both be president. And so we made the recordings. We played it back for the president. He was delighted. We sent him a film of the whole session on video. And then we slowly started to pack things up. Now, I had brought Gerald Ford's autobiography with me. And I said, Mr. President, would you mind signing this for me? And his secretary came out right away and said, leave it here and we'll get to it when we have the time. And he yelled back from his office where he had gone in. He says, I'll take care of it now. And he walked out and he took the book from me and then walked back to his office, sat at his desk and wrote an inscription in the book, walked back out and handed it to me. That's quite a gentleman. I was very impressed by that. There was something really special about Gerald Ford. He was the everyman kind of president. He was different than a lot of them. As he said, I never wanted to be president. He said, I wanted to be Speaker of the House. But that, of course, things change, things happen. And there's so many other things probably I'm not mentioning here that took place. But I think I've said enough here. But I want to close with something very important. And that is, tomorrow, on the anniversary of this historic recording. I mean, it's quite historic if you think about it. The person who is running the Edison recording project today is Wyatt Marcus. That's his baby now. And in his website on the Edison recording project, you can hear the recording of Gerald Ford making on November the 10th, 1999, along with a myriad of other voices and new ones that he's recording. So I wanted to talk about this anniversary because 25 years, that's a quarter of a century. And the world has changed completely since we made those recordings in California, in Rancho Mirage. And then, as now, in closing, as I said to him, as I packed everything up and was ready to walk out the door, he said, "That's quite a unit." And I said, "Yes, it is. And I really, truly appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. President. And thank you for joining me on this little journey." One little thing to share with you before I close up. I made a whole booklet of the photographs of the recording session. It's a whole book of these. And what I will do is, in time, I will put a whole series of these photographs and list them on Facebook, I guess, on my channel. And then you can see some of these things that took place a quarter century ago when another president after Theodore Roosevelt made a wax cylinder. Thank you so much.